Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Saturday edition of NBA Breakdown. We've had a great week, had a couple great guests. It's been a lot of fun for me. Had to take that week off, but it's been fun getting back into these breakdowns as I love getting into the data and the numbers and all that stuff. And hopefully, as always, this is helping you to find some angles. We're not always telling you what to bet, but hopefully giving you good information that helps you to make good decisions. I could not be more excited for the guest I have today. This is a guy who I got connected with maybe a month or a month and a half ago, has been incredibly generous and kind to me. And beyond that, has a tremendous amount of experience in the sports betting world. Super sharp. Phil Naessens, so happy to have you today. How you doing, man?
Oh, man, I was looking around to see who you were talking about there for a second. It's
You're
my
the only
pleasure.
one here, man.
You were a big help to me too, because as you found out later, I send my private picks to 5 separate people so that they can see what I'm doing behind closed doors, in addition to all the accountability I have. And I've been doing that for years. So you helped me out a lot, and I appreciated that so much. And you come on my show, and everything is great. And I'm looking forward to doing this Saturday morning thing with you.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to it too. I really appreciate you coming on. So,
oh yeah, anytime.
All right. Well, we got 6 NBA games today, and I feel like there's some interesting stuff today and potentially some good spots. So we'll get into it, see what we both think together.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump right into the first game. We've got the Memphis Grizzlies visiting the Orlando Magic. Memphis -7. We were talking before, -7.5 some places, 223.5 total. Ja Morant with a foot injury is day to day here. And so, but you and I have talked about this before. Even if he wasn't, who knows if he's going to play, right? You never know who's playing in the NBA until about half an hour before the games kick off. But do want to mention that he's on the injury report today. So what do you think when you look at this game?
I think I'm probably not going to watch this one.
Okay.
I used to cover the Grizzlies. We did a podcast, Kevin Leip and I. He was the beat writer for the Memphis Flyer, and we worked together for years, and during the grit and grind era. So I love the Grizzlies. And I love them in this spot, but I'm not going to watch this. Orlando, you know what? They've played a lot better recently, haven't they?
Yep.
They're 3-2 over their last 5. They're 20th in points allowed over their last 5. People talk about their defense, but the reality is they've allowed a lot of points in their last 5 games. Memphis, however, is 7th in points allowed. So when we talk about the Memphis Grizzlies, everyone thinks Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, what have you. But that group of kids plays defense. And even when especially when Morant is out.
Yep.
But they've played well with him defensively because they've learned how to cover up his shortcomings. Mm-hmm. I think that's the secret to the NBA. Our point guards don't play defense. They're not supposed to. They're the smallest guys on the floor usually. So what these great teams do is learn how to compensate for that. And that's what Memphis has done. But when you look at this Grizzly team, they're 4-1 in their last 5. They have played outstanding. They're 18-8 against the spread as the away team. This is a team that doesn't scoreboard watch. This is a team that doesn't worry about where they are in the standings because they're a lot farther ahead than where most people thought they'd be at this point. Whereas Orlando has played good defense. That stuff never gets talked about. I know that you and a couple of your guests this week did, and I appreciated that. But they're 7-16-0 against the spread at home. I can't buy into Orlando. I just can't buy into it. I can't buy into that total. I think that total might be a little bit too high at the present moment. So watching it, pass. But if I had to play, I would have to take the under in this event. That's what I would do.
Awesome, man. This is why I was excited to have you on. You're hitting on a lot of the great matchup type of stuff and recent trends here that I think too. I agree with you 100% on the Grizzlies. This is a team that tends to show up most days. We were talking before we came on about how it's so hard to know what teams are going to play like day to day in the NBA. But the Grizzlies are one of those that's at least more consistent.
Very, yes.
And they are a team, like, honestly, I bet on them a lot when Morant was out, and it was great because, like you said, they still are decent on offense and they play great on defense when he's out. So he's one of those guys where they're better with him, but It doesn't matter quite as much. So
makes sense.
So when I look at this game, Orlando's been over 100 points in 4 out of their last 6 at home. and they're which you talked about. They've scored a little bit better. Their season average is only 101.7. Especially at home earlier on in the season, Orlando was playing really low scoring games. I mean, they were under 100 a lot of the time, and they generally played okay defense. So they've increased that offensive production a little bit lately. However, they still are worse on offense and better on defense at home. Their offensive rating in the last 15 games is 3 points worse at home, and their defensive rating is 8 points better. So once we get over 5 points, I think it's a little more significant. So 8 points better in defensive rating in the last 15. That's a significant difference at home. They do only average 97.4 points per game on 2 days of rest. And they're on 2 days of rest here. Obviously, that goes back into earlier in the season, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But sometimes these teams, for whatever reason, tend to be pretty consistent on these different amounts of rest that they get. One of the other big things I found for Memphis is that Memphis is, in their last 15 games, their defensive rating at home is 102.5. Their defensive rating on the road is 111.4. So 9 points different in defensive rating. So like, to your point, if I was looking at the over under here, I actually see things pointing me in both directions. Right. Orlando plays better defense at home, but Memphis doesn't play as good a defense on the road. Orlando's been scoring better. So I would stay away from it just because I don't see any clear path in terms of the over under here. When it comes to the spread, I do like Memphis here because of how consistently they play. However, I wouldn't play them ahead of time, and here's the reason why. 6 of Orlando's 12 wins have been double-digit comebacks. If you've watched Orlando much this year, you know that it is a regular thing for them to go down significantly in the first half, and even if they don't win, they tend to close that gap in the second half. So So what I would watch in this game is to see if that pattern plays out again, and look at Orlando live around halftime, maybe getting, plus double digits instead of +7 or 7.5.
I think that's great. That's a great idea too. You know what you could also look up if you have the time is how many blown leads Memphis has over the season, because that's a great stat, but now we need a counter stat. And I think Memphis, I've watched plenty of Memphis games this year. And I would have to say I haven't seen them blow too many leads. And I think they're way ahead of the pack in terms of taking a lead into the fourth quarter. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But yeah, I like what you said there. It's a fade, right?
Yeah, it's a fade.
It's a fade.
I'm definitely gonna quote you, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Everything you say, I'm quoting you. No, and that's good, Phil. I think actually I will go look at some of that stuff because I've been running numbers lately to see how teams are performing in different quarters and if there's strong patterns there. So I'm going to check that out with the Grizzlies too.
I would be curious, really, is how many blown leads. Like I said, I don't think they've had too many, but if they have, and you find that out, and Orlando's a catch-up team, home run hitters at the end of the game. You might want to look the other way. That is a lot of points, or you want to wait until it gets up to 7.5 or 8, which it very well could be, depending on the Morant news.
Yeah, right. That could move the line for sure.
That for sure will. Not a tweet. No tweets. No tweets. Tweets don't move lines,
Phil. That's what you told me.
Yeah, only cash moves lines, man.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. I must have. You know what? I must have been in pre-medication mode when I told you that, because only cash moves lines.
I got you, man. I've learned that from you for sure. So,
all right.
Hey, before we move on, one other thing I'm going to throw in, just because one indicator that has been helpful to me this year, it definitely is not like I wouldn't make picks based off this, but matchup specific trends can be helpful sometimes. And Orlando is 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 between these two teams in Orlando as well.
Right.
So
that's
just one more thing to throw in.
But the history matters,
right?
It doesn't matter
more than I would
who's
think.
in the jersey. It is what it is. It's a strange thing because they're all new teams, right?
Totally.
But they still follow the pattern.
It's so weird, but it happens a lot. So,
and that's good for us.
All right. Yeah, exactly. It gives us something to look at. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. We got Miami going to Charlotte. Charlotte on a back-to-back here. Gordon Hayward did come back in the last game, and there hasn't been any indication. Sometimes on a back-to-back, when people are just back from injury, they'll sit out. It's possible here, but that news hasn't been delivered. Miami's -3.5, and the total is at 226. What do you see in this one?
Well, I see the Heat possibly missing Jimmy Butler. That's something, but they're 16th in scoring. But where they flex their muscles is on the defensive end of the floor. It's always been the case. It's a Pat Riley thing. It's an Eric Spoelstra thing. It just is, and it's a Miami Heat thing. Always been the case. And they're fifth in points allowed. That's important. Charlotte, first in scoring, and why wouldn't they be? They play offense like the Harlem Globetrotters. They run, gun, they throw balls behind their backs, they do the little things, they shoot 40-footers, those things. But they're 28th in points allowed, first in scoring. So you know where their emphasis lies. I'll outscore you. That always bodes well for totals. But where I come from, the Heat are 2-3 over their last 5. A lot of that has to do with injuries.
Yep.
Also Bam Adebayo is back in the lineup, and there's a time where you have to kind of mix all that together. And I know he's been great, but it's also had other guys kind of having to take a back seat, if you will, and rightly so. Charlotte is on a 3-game losing streak, as you mentioned, and they've allowed the 23rd most points over the last 5 games per game, whereas the Heat, they've allowed 18th most points. And again, that's a lot of that has to do with the fact that Butler hasn't played much. And I think that's important to note. Miami, though, covers the spread when they're on the road. They're 16-13 against the spread this season. Charlotte, however, really covers on the road, 15-8 at home. So that 3.5, that's a nice play for them. 3-game losing streak, playing at home, minus Jimmy Butler. I think I still take the Heat. I don't know if they'll win. Or I'm sorry, they're the favorite. So of course they're going to win if I take them. But I would also look to the money line on this one too in a parlay. I don't really tell people to parlay, but if you're going to, this is a money line parlay with bells on it for you, because I think the Heat are going to win this game. They may not cover, but I think they still win.
Yep. So I don't do a lot of parlays either, but there's actually 2 or 3 on this slate where I think it might not be the worst play to take the money line, because the game could end up being closer than the spread. But so I definitely have some numbers to share here, but big picture, you mentioned about Adebayo being back. Butler is actually probable right now, so we have to keep an eye on it and see if he ends up in or out, because again, you never know. But Lowry is back too, and Lowry was out for quite a while. So the biggest thing for me here is that the Heat are kind of getting healthy. And when I go back to the beginning of the season and look at how the Heat were when they were healthy, I really believe they can be the best team in the East. Whether they will be or not, I'm not sure, but like right at the top. I think this is one of the best teams in the league when everyone is healthy and they're playing together well. And that's hardly happened at all this year, because Adebayo was out for so long and Butler's been out a lot. And then Lowry's been out for a lot of games here recently. So I like that they're coming back together as a team. Now, looking at this matchup specifically today, Charlotte actually had a really good run on defense there for a while, starting 8 games ago and then back to 15. They had defensive rating under 100 3 times and 105 or better 2 times. But in their last 7, their defense hasn't been as good. 109 or worse defensive rating every game, and 3 games were 117 or worse. So that defense, there was like this blip, like you shared, they're not good on defense on the season. They had this little blip where it seemed to be better, but I think it's trending the wrong way again. Charlotte's really hard for me on offense lately because they're so inconsistent. At home since Christmas, they have highs of 140, 123, 121, 117, 114. But they also have 5 games where they scored 103, 99, 101, 91, and 90. So they have 5 games where they've been around 100 or less as well. So I just think Charlotte's a team that's really inconsistent offensively lately. And I think their numbers are padded a little bit by what they did early in the year. Charlotte does have their best offensive rating of any time frame on back-to-backs, actually, at 117. And they average 123.9 points per game on back-to-backs. However, I think we have to take that with a grain of salt, because 2 of those games on back-to-backs, they scored 158 against Indiana and 135 against Houston, who everyone scores 130 points against. So if you take those 2 out, it would still be good. I'm not saying it's not good, but it's not going to be 123.9. That really skewed the numbers, those 2 games. Miami, this is a straight up number, so it's helpful on the money line stuff, maybe not on the other stuff as much, but they're 15-5 straight up against teams that are in the bottom 10 defensively in the league this year. And Charlotte, like you said, 5th worst defense on the season and trending negatively, I would say, on defense. So all of that said for me, oh, and also Charlotte is 3-6 against the spread on back-to-backs this year. And, like I said, 2 of those, they scored like crazy. So all of that for me would lean. I definitely like Miami better in this game. If Butler plays, I like them a lot.
Right.
At -3.5, if Butler's in, Lowry's back, all that stuff, I think this is a great spot for them. If he's out, a little more iffy, a little more lean toward the money line probably. But Charlotte's definitely in a funk right now.
I'm sorry. The other thing
go
about the
ahead.
Heat, the other thing about the Heat is Tyler Hero. When he comes off the bench specifically, he crushes. And he's going to clock this team off the bench tonight. Look for that, because that bench plays worse defense than their starters. And he's going to be going up against those guys. And that's important to note. And he's got a chip on his shoulder, too, because he feels like he was snubbed for the All-Star. And he's a kid who actually can take a chip on his shoulder and produce. A lot of guys, they go out there and fool around. Not this kid. So that's something that you can think about, too.
That's great, man. That's a great thing to point out. Especially, I don't do a ton with props either, but something you might want to look into further.
Or daily fantasy, if you're playing that.
Daily fantasy, yep.
Tyler Hero might be your guy tonight.
Love it. Great call. All right, next game up, we got the Suns going to the Wizards. Phoenix -7.5 off a loss in their last game and a total of 222. No major injury news here. What do you think on this? Well, Beal's still out, but he's been out, so.
Right. I forgot Bradley Beal played in the league for a while.
Yeah, I know. It's easy to forget.
And it's really interesting because, they've had so many people in Washington, right, alongside Bradley Beal, and there's no change. It doesn't matter who they bring in. They're still the same Wizards. But one thing about the Wizards is they've played better defense than most people give them credit. They're 18th in points allowed, and that's pretty good considering where they started this season, like near the bottom. So that's something you want to keep an eye on. But the Suns, they're 3rd in scoring, and they're 7th in points allowed. And that's because of Chris Paul. He's a defensive point guard, too. He goes and gets his. He's 38 years old, for goodness sakes. He goes and gets his, but he stops you from getting yours. And they don't have a single player on that team, Washington Wizards team, that can deal with Chris Paul. They don't have anyone to deal with Devin Booker. And they certainly don't have anyone to deal with the big kid, DeAndre Ayton. Not to mention the Bridges kid and all the other folks they can traipse out there. Monty's going 10 deep. And when you can go 10 deep in the NBA, there's a reason you have a great record. And that's why. But over their last 5 games, the Suns are 20th in points allowed. I know they've been tinkering with their lineups a little bit too, giving some players rest. And that's important. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, they've been on the road for quite a bit too of those 5 games. But Washington, they're 16th in points allowed over their last 5. They're 12-13 against the spread this season at home, whereas the Suns are 15-9 against the spread as the away team. That number is 7.5, 222. You could probably make a case for playing the Suns and eating the points. And you can also make a case for this game perhaps going under, because without Bradley Beal, I think they are better defensively, to be honest with you. And I think they've concentrated and focused a little more. And when that's the case, and at home on a Saturday night in early February, Washington could be a sneaky thing and keep it close. So I guess I would play the Suns, and I would eat the points, and I would probably play under, because as well as I do that Chris Paul's going to walk that ball up the floor. He's going to make sure they keep the ball in their hands, and he's going to eat as much time off the clock as he can. And they're just going to go get good buckets. And that's what they've done this year. And I see them doing it again tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. This is, I'll share some research, but this is one of those games where I said I might do a money line parlay. Like, I really think Phoenix wins this game.
Yeah.
7.5 is pushing it, So for me, Washington, before they beat Philadelphia in the last game, had a 6-game losing streak. And the team they beat before that losing streak was Philadelphia. It feels like they kind of have Philadelphia's number or match up well with them. Plus, Philadelphia is super inconsistent. But Washington just hasn't been playing great lately, especially, on both sides of the ball. I think they haven't been fantastic. They allowed 109 points or more in 7 out of their last 10. So that's on the defensive side. Phoenix, on the other hand, has scored 109 or more in 10 out of their last 11. So they're scoring at that rate pretty consistently. One of the things for me here, too, is that Phoenix is getting healthy again, and they have been for a couple games now, but they feel similar to me in the West to the Heat in the East. Okay. Both teams that are really dominant, and when they're healthy, I think can be incredibly dominant. So I think it matters that they're getting healthy. Phoenix is 15-3 against the East this year with a point differential of 10.2. So that's pretty strong. Washington, and then the other thing for me is this rest thing again, which I don't want to put too much emphasis on because it's definitely not the only thing. But when stuff stands out in these different time frames, I do pay attention to it. And so Washington on 2 days of rest, their offensive rating is 105.6, which is low. And their defensive rating is 114.1. They're the worst team in the league against the spread off of 2 days of rest at 1-7 against the spread. They only average 99 points a game when they're on 2 days of rest. So all of that to say, I like Phoenix quite a bit here also because I think Phoenix bounces back. I mean, they scored fine against Atlanta. They just didn't play good defense. And actually, I love what you shared about how they've been playing worse defensively recently. Sure. So that's something to pay attention to. But I do like Phoenix quite a bit to bounce back here. I would take them at -7.5, but again, this might be a money line parlay piece because I definitely think they win the game. And I would lean toward the under as well, largely because of those stats I shared about Washington. But Phoenix, like you said, can definitely play slower as well. The other thing I'd throw in here that I watch every game with Phoenix, if this game is relatively close going into the fourth quarter, I would probably bet Phoenix going into the fourth quarter. They are ridiculously good at closing out games.
Yeah, they don't blow many leads, do they? And that's very important. I tell you those are good numbers. I gotta switch my pad here.
All right. Let's go to the next page.
No, I don't track my picks here.
You don't?
No, I use BetStamp for that, but this is my show notes.
I thought you put them on poster boards and hung them up on your wall.
Well, I did that too, but I have to stop. Okay. Kim made me stop doing all that stuff. So what am I supposed to do? I have to listen to the boss. But
yeah, you do.
At the end of the day, Atlanta's playing well, by the way, and let's not sugarcoat that. That was a good play for Atlanta that night.
That was.
And something they played well on the defensive end. That's where they're flexing their muscles. But the end of the day is that Washington doesn't have those kind of muscles to flex.
Agreed.
I just don't think so. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. All right, let's do the Knicks and the Lakers, two storied franchises who are struggling tremendously.
Ooh, my Knicks.
Yeah. Oh, see, man, you're the second person I've had on this week that's a huge Knicks fan. So
I have to own it. I have to own that.
You do
52 years worth. My first game ever, my grandfather, we were still in New York at the time, and we went to the game 7 with the they call it the Willis Reed game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he came out of the locker room, remember? And everybody went nuts. And I said to my grandfather, I said, Grandpa, why are they cheering for this black man when in the streets they call him a different thing? I said, I don't understand that. And I was 4 years old, and I just never understood that. But I don't remember much about the game, but I remembered that because our friend, who was also African American, was with us, and he said, "That's a sharp kid right there. He's figured it out already, hasn't he?" He said, "You got to understand the difference between sports hate and racism." That's what they taught me that day. But anyway, that's how long I've been a Knicks fan, and it's been a really interesting ride ever since.
I love that, man. Hey, most times on the breakdown, we don't get into the evils of racism. So this is the heavest episode.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's so early. I just figured I'd throw it out there.
It's a good thing. I actually think that kind of social stuff is important to talk about when it fits. So
if it fits, and it did this time. I made sure
absolutely.
I put a square peg in a round hole, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning. We can do that.
That wasn't a negative at all, man. I'm saying
I know.
Great, and I love you putting that stuff in there because I care about that stuff too. So
I know you do. That's why we get along so well.
Exactly.
We know the difference too, right?
Yep, for sure. So, well, in this game, we've got the Lakers -1.5, and the total's 213.5. So, which of these teams that's been stinking is gonna take this one?
Okay, now I am going to watch this game. Full disclosure, because I watch most of the Knicks games. Man, I tell you. I hope LeBron's father-in-law is not watching this because I'm friends with him. and he's a great guy. But LK, I got to go with the Knicks here tonight. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the Lakers are a dumpster fire without your son-in-law. But you already knew that, right? And they might bring little Bronny up there, and he's doing all right for a 6, 8, 15-year-old. But at the end of the day, the Knicks are 7th in points allowed over their last 5 games. They've really changed went back to what they were doing best, and that's playing defense. That's what they did last season when they got into the playoffs as a surprise to everyone. That's what Thibodeau's known for, and they've kind of gotten away from that at the beginning of the season. Maybe some kids got big heads because they thought they were better offensively than they were, but then they realized they couldn't outscore anybody, so they better stop someone. And that's what they seem to have done. Now, one of the things that makes me nervous about the Knicks, though, is they don't score points.
Yeah.
They're 27th in the league in scoring, but overall 6th in the league in points allowed. The Lakers, 12th in scoring. That's interesting because they've been injured most of the season, yet they still know how to put the ball in the basket. But they're 27th in the game in points allowed. That makes the Knicks offense look that much better. You've got Julius Randle coming back to LA, and he was not happy the way he was traded. And I know that at the end of the day, that's been years. But as an ex-athlete, I can tell you that's never a good thing. This is always an FU game when that happens.
Yep.
And that's something that you have to take into consideration also. The Lakers, surprisingly enough, are 11th in points allowed over their last 5. They flexed, but LeBron's not playing tonight, I don't think. I'm pretty sure he's
doubtful.
out.
He'll probably be out.
If he's doubtful, he's out. That's one thing you know about him, because he's either out or doubtful means out, probable means yes.
Means it, exactly.
Yeah. Because that could
report every day one way or another.
Yeah, he is. And it never used to be the case, but let's face it, he's 36, 37 also. He's getting up there. And that man has taken more physical beatings than any other player in the NBA in this era. Because every time he goes to the rack, he gets fouled because he's so strong, the referees don't think it's a hindrance to his shot. So he gets hammered a lot. But that's okay. At the end of the day, though, the Knicks are 12-12 against the spread as the away team. And the Lake Show, 11-17 against the spread as the home team. I don't like this Lakers team without LeBron James. I don't like this team with Russell Westbrook on the floor either. He's a turnover machine. He doesn't play defense, and he just makes mistakes. He's been in the league. I said this on my show this week. He's been in the league for how long? 13, 14 years, and he makes the same mistakes he made the first night he stepped on the floor. It hasn't changed with him. And they don't use Anthony Davis right either. They just don't do much right. And I think the Knicks, with their defense being the underdog tonight, I would take the Knicks straight up on the money line, and I would take a shot at it. That's what I would do.
I like it. That's ultimately where I'm going to land as well, is on the Knicks tonight. It is a little bit cloudy for me, but I think a lot of the stuff that you said, I do agree that the Lakers are a mess without LeBron. I think Anthony Davis can be a good secondary piece, but I don't think he's a leader. And I don't think that he just doesn't lead teams to victory, even if they put up points. Because I was looking at, it's a small sample, but the last 4 where Davis has been back and LeBron has been out. And like you said, they actually have scored pretty well, except that game against the Clippers. It's been 110, 114, and 121. So that's pretty good score on the ball.
Yep.
But they've allowed 111, 117, 129. So, they're playing relatively close games, but in the end, they're not winning. And I could see this game staying relatively close because of what you said. I think the Knicks have a good defense, though it's not as good away from home as it is at home. I think the Lakers have a decent offense, so I can see this being a back and forth close game, but I think the Knicks are more likely to win it at the end than the Lakers are. A few other things that push me again, man, there's so many things coming up on the days of rest thing for me today, more than normal, but the Knicks are 3-0 in their last 15 on 2 days of rest and have a point differential of 12.3. So they've been playing much better on 2 days of rest than they have any other time frame. So I think that bodes well for them. Also, I think the Lakers, So one of two things. The Lakers have shot the ball really well from three-point range in the last 4 games, 37.9, 36.7, 42.9, 37.5. Their season average is just below 35% from three-point range. So they've been over that by at least 2.5 points every game. So I think one of two things is going on, and I haven't gotten to watch as many of these games as I'd like. Either Anthony Davis is helping to create space and they're getting better looks, or they've just shot really well and there's some negative regression coming. So
Maybe
that,
so, yeah.
And I think against a better defense like the Knicks, they're going to struggle to shoot as well. And so I like the Knicks to be able to hold them down some.
There's one other thing, though, about the Knicks that you can use as future reference, I guess, is anytime you think the Knicks are going to score at least 104, 105 points, they're going to win that game because they stop people. They get stops. That's one thing about the Knicks is they get stops. They might not score the basketball and make a difference behind it or make that matter, but they get stops. And if you get a team that gets stops, especially in the fourth quarter against a team, okay, they score, but they don't really score. When you look at that roster, you're expecting 60 points from their big three, if you will, every ball game, and it's just not the case. And they don't get much else. When those three players are together, no one else gets the ball. And you can beat them. Tonight, they're going to beat them because Anthony Davis is going to get dragged outside the rim because the bottom line is he's going to have to cover Randle. He's the only one who can, and Randle's going to park him outside the three-point line, and he's going to let their big kid, the Knicks' big kid in the middle, take care of business, and I just forgot his name.
Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, that kid. Yeah, Mitchell Robinson. Yeah, him. I boo on him a lot in my house, but that's because I'm a Knicks fan.
Great. I love what you said about Julius Randle in this game against the Lakers. He's the kind of guy too who's going to hold a grudge.
Oh yeah, forever.
And go at it. So
he's going to be sitting on his porch when he's 80 with his great grandchildren, and he's going to say, "You know how much I hate those Lakers. They brought me up. They treated me bad. They used me like a stepchild when we were terrible. And the second LeBron showed up, they had no more use for me."
Yep, that's right. That is so true.
He would do that. I'm sure of it. I love that stuff, by the way.
Yep.
There's nothing better than to be angry and to be able to back that up. Tennis, in my world, that's the prime thing. The prime motivating factor. Revenge.
Good. Well, it looks like we like the Knicks here. The other thing that would push me over a little bit is the Knicks are actually 8-2 against the spread on 2 days of rest, which is best in the league. Yeah, so it's not just good; it's best in the league.
It's that defense, man.
And they're 5-2 against the spread in the last 7 meetings between these teams in Los Angeles. So, so I do like the Knicks here. I agree with you on taking the money line shot instead of taking the spread or taking And then on the total, I actually would stay away from it.
Yeah, it could go either way.
I can see it being right. I can see this game being 99-94, and I can also see this game being 113-107 or something. So
and I could see this game going into overtime, Trevor.
Yeah,
if that happens, 213 is not going to be enough.
It's a great call.
You're looking at 1.5 point spread, the home team getting or giving up 1.5.
Yep.
That means no matter which way you look at that, the odds makers feel it's going to be very close, and they can take money on both sides of the line for this and limit all their liabilities this way. So I would leave that total alone.
That's a phenomenal point. So I enjoy UFC as well. And one of the podcasts I listen to and things people say is there are situations that are dog or pass. Like if you want to bet on the dog, that's fine. If not, you just need to pass. This total feels like over or pass. If you think it's going over, that's fine. But what you said about overtime too, don't play the under in this.
No, you know what? Especially since I bragged up the Knicks and their defense. You know what's going to happen tonight, right?
Right.
They're going to make whatever. I do a good enough job of making myself look silly, but they're probably going to help me. Now I'm going to start to sound like Stephen A, and I don't want to sound like him.
I can't wait till this game is like 125, 123 or something.
I'm going to get a text from Trevor about 10 o'clock tonight. What the heck? That was like spot on. What happened to the defense? No more shows for you.
That's right. Oh, boy. No, you told me to stay off, so it's good.
I did. Yeah. Don't fool with the totals with the Knicks.
That's right. All right, we got 2 games left. Next up is the Bucks at the Blazers, who just made a big trade and are absolutely reeling in their last 3 games. Milwaukee -9.5, total 226.5. Where are we going?
Well, that line jumped from when we did it, when I wrote my little notes down this
Yep, it
morning.
jumped this morning. Yep.
Another point. You know, that's a sucker play right there, kids. The problem with people, and I'm not saying anyone in particular, is that usually what happens is you see a team that's just been dismantled and basically they've lost their best wing defender in Covington and they've lost one of their most consistent scorers in Powell. I believe CJ McCollum is out. Damian Lillard is probably out for the season. Those kids on that bench are looking for an NBA checks. I don't know if you've ever seen an NBA check, but if you haven't, let me just put it to you this way. You would have thought you hit the lotto, and that's the kid that you think can't play. So what I'm going to say to you is never fear, always fear that. We saw that so many times with these last-second replacements, except for Isaiah Thomas, of course, because he was the same as he was since he broke his hip. But that being said, this Blazers team, Chauncey Billups is a fighter. And those kids are going to be fighting now for real for a job because you just got rid of half your team. And you've got these new guys coming on, and they probably will stay with Portland or get waived, one of the two. But they're still going to want to get playing time. So you're going to have to pay attention to that. And the Bucks are a horrific cover team. Just horrific. 12-13 against the spread is the away side this season. That's not an NBA defending champion, is it? And
No.
there's a reason for that. Because they know they're going to make the playoffs and they don't have to exert that energy because they're going to make the top 6. They're not worried. They can lose a game on February the 5th or whatever day it is today. I seem to have lost track since I got back from Vegas. But at the end of the day, Milwaukee's not a team that you can really trust against the spread on the road because you just don't know. Because look, I mean, they've got a great team, but since Brook Lopez hasn't been on the floor, that spacing is gone. So what they've had to do and rely on is Giannis, and Chris Middleton mid-range jumpers. That's not a good recipe, especially against a hungry bunch of kids that are out to prove something. And I would leave this one alone. The total also went down, and I would say play the over. That's what I would do. Because when you look at Portland, over their last 5, and they're missing the 2 backcourt guys, but that helps them because CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard have never played defense together. Never. They try. They're very good actors, but they're not good defenders. And anyone who says that they are needs to stop because you would be wrong. But the Bucks over their last 5 are 3-2. Again, they don't have any concerns. There's nothing to say to them. We need to win this game because 3 weeks from the season ending, they're going to see that schedule and they're going to say, doink, doink, doink. We just made those games up. So be careful with that. But the Bucks are 25th in points allowed over their last 5. They're not going to play defense tonight. They don't need to. And they're going to look past this team. And this Portland team is going to be sneaky surprising and score a whole pile of points. And I'm going to take the over, especially now that it dropped a full point since this morning.
Yep. Man, I love what you're sharing about the Bucks recently because one of the things that had me questioning what to do with this game is that the Bucks have been a pretty good defensive team overall on the whole year. But hearing those numbers recently is interesting. So now I will say it looks like McCollum should be in tonight.
Okay.
And then all those guys they just got from the Clippers are listed as game time decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so who knows if they play or not. I don't think it hurts them, though, if those guys play. I think some of those guys could be a decent fit with their team, and they haven't been good with Powell. So when I look at this game, man, Portland has been abysmal the last 3 games. They've scored. I didn't write it. They've been under 100 in all 3. And scored in the 80s in at least one of those. Their shooting has been really the problem. Field goal percentage, 39.6, 35.7, 42. 3-point percentage, 18.2, 33.3, and 18.4. They shot under 20% from 3-point range in 2 out of 3. That's just crazy. So here's the thing. One of the things that I like to think about is when teams are on a bad run like this, at some point they're bouncing back. Like Portland is not going to score under 100 every game for the rest of the season.
No.
But it's going to start feeling that way, right? Like even when I think about Portland, I'm like, oh, this team can't score. But go back past those 3 previous games and they scored fine. You know, they're 105 to 115 point a night kind of team. And they obviously do have some changes with the trades and everything. But I think that points me toward, like you said, looking at a team in Milwaukee that just doesn't always show up. It's so hard to know what they're going to do. Let's see here. Milwaukee is 2-3, and they're averaging 103.8 points per game against the Blazers division. They're 1-4, averaging 107.8 points per game in their last 5 on the road. So they haven't been scoring well recently on the road. And the crazy thing about that is that 107.8 points a game, they played Cleveland. But other than that, they played Atlanta, Charlotte twice, and Brooklyn. 3 teams that play terrible defense for the most part. Like you said, Atlanta's been a little bit better recently, but still not like a top half of the league defense.
No, but they were red hot when they ran into them too, because they had 5 or 6 straight. I mean, that matters too.
Yep. So I just look at this, and actually, so I see as high as plus 475 on the Blazers money line out there tonight. I think the possibility that the Bucks never have a lead in this game is very low. Like, they're going to lead at some point, I would guess. So I definitely wouldn't go big on this, but I'm even considering like a quarter or half unit shot on the Blazers money line at some point if it pushes up over plus 500.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, at plus 500, like, I think this is a pretty good spot potentially for the Blazers because their value is depressed right now and people overvalue the Bucks.
Well, that's exactly right. And you know what? If CJ McCollum plays tonight, he's going to break off a 40 piece. And I'm going to tell you why, because he's probably getting traded and they're going to let him play one more time in front of his hometown crowd. He's been in there his entire career. He's been a key member of that team, obviously. And without Lillard, he's going to be bringing the floor up. He's going to jack everything up he can. He's a big-time scorer. He was a scorer at Lehigh. It was no surprise when he got into the NBA and scored. It won't be a surprise tonight, especially against a team that doesn't play that much defense.
Yeah.
Or doesn't.
Lately, at least.
Yeah, lately. Though I guarantee you, when the playoffs come, you're going to see a different Bucks defense. There's no doubt about that. But tonight, in the Moda Center, no way. CJ McCollum's going to go off. If you have a prop for CJ, play it. Play the over. Because if he plays tonight, he's going to light them up. There won't be a minutes restriction because Portland's not going to give a crap either way. They're going to move him. So they're going to let him say goodbye, and that'll be it. And he will say goodbye because that's what scorers, especially from Canton, Ohio, do.
Well, that'll be an interesting one if he gets moved. I'll look forward to seeing what happens with that. One other thing that you could just consider based on what we've talked about here is Portland's team total is 108.5. And so if you feel like this is a good spot offensively for Portland, that's something to think about. Though it's scary after they scored under 103 straight games. But,
especially when you got a big spread like that.
Yep. All right, we're to the last game here.
I looked at it and I wanted to cry.
It's the best game of the day. Thunder at Kings.
Yeah. We started off with a caboose.
That's right.
The engine of the train was so.
It's at the end, man. So Sacramento's minus 5.5, total of 217 in this game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander still going to be out. Jeremiah Robinson, Earl, Roby, Wiggins, all those guys still out for the Thunder as they have been for the last few games. The Kings, who knows with De'Aaron Fox? I read something today that said he should be back in this game, but I think he was supposed to be back in like the last 63 games. So who knows what's going to happen with him?
He's still heartbroken over what happened to him in Cleveland, how Darius Garland broke one off on him.
That could be.
He ain't played since. And you know what? They had such problems, that team. Look, here, I'm going to give you one number about OKC. And I used to be, when I hosted my radio show, and you can ask any Thunder fan, I was their worst enemy because I hate that team. I'm a Seattle Supersonics fan, so obviously I don't like the blunder. Now, that being said, this is sports betting, and that's a little different. OKC is 17-9 against the spread as the away team. We talked about this a few weeks ago on my show, you and I, where we talked about some teams that were surprisingly good in certain situations. OKC is surprisingly good on the road. And here's something else to consider, that over their last 5 games, the Oklahoma City Thunder are 30th in scoring, the season, 30th in scoring, 11th in points allowed. But over their last 5, they're second in the league. They've allowed the second fewest points in their last 5. And this is a Sacramento Kings team that is a dumpster fire. a real one. They've been that way since Chris Webber left, and they have not changed. I mean, they have been bad. And this team at home is 14-15 against the spread, and they have not played very well. They've allowed the 22nd most points per game over their last 5. I don't care who you are. If you're an NBA player, you can score on that basketball team. More importantly, if you're a mediocre defender, you can stop them from scoring because they just don't seem to have anything together there. And it's a sad thing to say, but at the end of the day, this is an easy one for me. The easiest one of the day.
Okay.
OKC. I'm OKC to cover.
All right. I love it. I think there's some good stuff pointing in that direction. So I have some numbers that back up what you're saying about just go along with what you're saying about Oklahoma City.
No, back me up, bro. Back me up.
No,
That's a fair thing. No, I go for it.
They fit together. So, yeah, they've been winning these games recently because of their defense. They've still been terrible in terms of scoring. So since Shea, in games without Shea this year, Oklahoma City still hasn't scored more than 104 points, and they averaged 97.6. Now, the one game where you might say they did score more was when they went to overtime. Was that against Indiana, I think, or Dallas? I think it was against Dallas. Yeah.
Dallas, yes.
But they only scored 103 in regulation. So that's what I'm going off of still, because, I mean, overtime is overtime. Of course, they can score more if they go there. So this is a team that they don't score anyway, but without Shea, they don't score at all, averaging under 100. But in this 6-game stretch, Oklahoma City's holding opponents to 43.9% from the field and 27.9% from three-point range. They're just locking people down on defense. Now, Sacramento on the other side, man, I lost like 3 or 4 times in a row trying to bet Sacramento. So they're on my do not bet list because I can't get them right.
You have one of those too, eh?
Yep. In their last 14 games, they are averaging 119 points at home and only 102 on the road. So one of the things I've been trying to do a better job of recently is not just making a case for one side that I like, but trying to find what are the things that go against that. And one thing that I would say is that Sacramento's been pretty good on offense at home recently. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they will be tonight because they're always up and down. Another thing is that Sacramento has a point differential of minus 5.9 against teams that are on a back-to-back. That's the second worst of any time frame. They have a negative point differential in pretty much every single one, but this is one of the biggest. Oklahoma City's 4-3 against the spread on back-to-backs, so that's not a big problem for them. The one trend that would be concerning to me for the Thunder is that the Thunder are 3-9-1 against the spread in their last 13 when they're starting 5 combined for 160 minutes or more the previous day.
Wow.
So, it's one trend, though. There are trends that go the other way.
Of course.
The Kings are only 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games as a favorite. That might go back 6 years because I don't think they're a favorite very often.
Right.
But kind of trends on both sides here. I think looking at the big picture here, I think Oklahoma City almost like this feels a little bit like Memphis when Ja Morant was out earlier in the year. Now,
that's a
Oklahoma City doesn't have the same offense that Memphis has with with these guys out. But the defense is lockdown defense, and that's the way they stay in games right now. Sacramento is inconsistent and can easily go cold for a game on offense. So the things that I like here is if you think Oklahoma City wins this game, I think the under looks really good.
Yes.
Because I don't see Oklahoma City scoring more than, 110 would be pushing it. They haven't gone over 104 without Shea. So 106, 107, maybe against a bad defense in Sacramento, but I think the under is good if you like the Thunder. I do like the Thunder here as well, just because if Sacramento can't score, I don't know what their win condition is. And getting 6.5 points gives you some cushion as well. This is another place where I could even see looking at the money line potentially with a smaller play on the Thunder because you can't trust the Kings. So
none.
I haven't taken anything here, but I also would look toward the Thunder with the points, and I would look toward the under in this game.
And also Oklahoma City's on a 3-game winning streak.
Yes.
And those kids are feeling it, because it's one of those things where they want to pick up a check. Oklahoma City has more first-round picks now than Boston did when Danny Ainge threw them all away in the trash can for Kyrie Irving. But they've got a ton of picks. So those kids on that roster, they're either looking to make that roster for next year or looking to get a chance to play somewhere else. And they're hungry, and they're going to go after somebody. And this Kings team is probably a sitting duck for most teams. I don't know this for sure. I'm not in any NBA locker rooms anymore. I don't cover the NBA. I do sports betting, as you know. But at the end of the day, that team, that Thunder team, and I do not like that organization. That Thunder team, the last 3 nights, has been very impressive. And the way they play together, in spite of the fact that they've lost their best scorer, that tells me something. That team's got a little bit of heart. You can't say any of that stuff for the Sacramento Kings.
Agreed. And just another number, in the last 4 games, the most points that the Thunder have given up is 103. So looking at this spread, you could also, if you think that's how the game's going to go, the Kings team total under could be another place to look. That's where you would get the most cushion in terms of Oklahoma City winning this game or keeping it close, and then the points for the game. So another thing to look at.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We did it, Phil.
We did. Great stuff. Yeah, I didn't scare anyone out there, did I?
So I know, man. So fun. So I know you've just got a few minutes left. I don't know if you can fit it in, but tell people where to find you, how they can connect with you. One of these days, we're gonna do a special podcast episode and get into Phil's story a little bit more.
My frustrated tennis career that turned out to be the reason I'm sitting here today.
I can't wait.
Oh, yeah.
No, but tell people where to find you, man.
Anyway, on Twitter, it's at P Naessens Show. That's PNAESSENS SHOW. You can find my show. I do 2 shows. I host the Phil Naessens Show. It's a daily sports betting. We usually do like 6 or 7 podcasts. We break them up a little bit. Trevor here has always been on it. He comes on every week. You can find that at philnaessensshow.com. And I also host a show called This Week in Tennis. It's actually how I got into media in the first place. And that's been around for 13 years now. And you can find that the same place, philnaessensshow.com. And one last thing, we're doing a sports trading newsletter. It's based on stock markets. I know you've seen it, Trevor. A lot of you didn't. We were giving away free samples for the first month, and now it's premium. It's $49.99, and you can find that at cashwithflash.com.
Cashwithflash.com. That's the place to go to find.
You can find everything instead of trying to figure out how to spell my name and all that foolishness. But at the end of the day, thank you so much for letting me be here. I'm honored that you asked me, to be honest. I wouldn't put me on a screen, but it is what it is. It was a great show, man. You're fantastic at what you do, really.
Thanks,
honestly.
Man. I really appreciate it.
Best things in a very seedy business is this young fella right here.
Thanks,
and becoming a good friend of mine too, and I appreciate
Absolutely. I feel the same, Phil. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And I do have to say real quick, if you have any interest in tennis, everything Phil does is great, but that This Week in Tennis podcast is awesome. So if you have any interest in tennis, go check that out for sure. So
and the Boo Birds are after me. I hooted on a couple of my former students yesterday on the show. I talked about them. I talked about their father. But that's okay. I know them a long time, so it's all good.
Always getting yourself in a little trouble, but
that's how you do radio. You have to.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
It's not sports betting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, Phil, so much. Great fun today. Everybody, thanks for watching. As always, if this is something you're benefiting from, I just would really appreciate you going and leaving a review on the podcast, liking, retweeting, commenting on Twitter. That kind of stuff is always much appreciated. Have a great day. Hope all the bets go well for you today, and I will see you on Twitter.